Welcome to today's podcast. I'm going to be answering a follower's question about endometriosis. This woman is booked in for a hysterectomy and an oophorectomy in a matter of weeks, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some insights into this. Before I go into that, I want to invite you to a free live masterclass. I run these a couple of times a year. This will be on Thursday, the 18th of July at 9 a.m. New Zealand time, and it's about the missing link to activate healing. It's perfect for you if you are experiencing a chronic health condition, you have tried all of the conventional treatments, all of the alternative treatments, and it just isn't working. I'm going to be diving into the root cause that even the best practitioners and specialists don't address, how and why you store emotions in your body, how to work out what emotions are behind your presentation, the fastest way to find out the message your chronic health condition has for you, and one of the biggest mistakes I see people make when it comes to emotional processing. So I'll pop the link in the show notes and I hope you can join me live. There'll be a limited time replay. Okay, so recently on my Instagram stories, I asked if anyone had something they wanted me to talk about on the podcast. And I got a response, endo. And I responded to this person. I said, do you have any more information? Because what's really important is that I know that there are overarching metaphysical, emotional themes around different conditions and different body parts, but how it presents for you, what stage and phase you're at, the underpinning emotion, metaphysical meaning is going to be very unique for you. And I do see a lot of people out there reading these books that tell them the emotions behind their issues, but then that's it. What do you then do with it? Okay, I know that sometimes there's affirmations out there, and sometimes they do work. Sometimes they can work for years until they stop. And I'm not the biggest fan of affirmations that are just given to you. I want the affirmations and the messages to come from within you. So it was really useful to get more insight into this. I don't know if I've got the whole story. I have definitely worked with clients with severe endometriosis, some who have been told that they wouldn't get pregnant and then they did get pregnant, quite debilitating endometriosis that's affected their work and their lifestyle. So I'm going to share my experience and really delve deep. Now, I did say to this person, there's so many things, and you know that I can be quite direct and blunt, and sometimes it can be a little bit negatively geared. Are you okay with that? And she gave me full permission. So what I'm going to do is read out most of what she sent to me. And this is how my brain operates. I never know how long this podcast is going to go for. I have no idea what I'm going to say, but I love that I did get more information. And so if you want me to answer anything on the podcast, give me as much detail as you can, like a 1 or 2 minute voice message that I can play back so everyone can hear it, or write it out and I will read it out so everyone's got a bit of context. Because honestly, this emotional work goes a lot deeper than what I think most people recognize. Okay, I finally got a diagnosis of endo, which has actually helped me understand so many root causes for many of my physical issues and some mental. And I'm having a hysterectomy, oophorectomy, as there's lots of benign things growing in my ovaries, and an endo excision in a month. And then I feel like I have a clean slate to start with. But endo is a chronic illness and I don't want it to grow more. I'm aware of the estrogen growth factor and hormones, and I understand the lifestyle requirements, anti-inflammatory approach, etc. But I want to know the emotions behind it all, why it might have formed in the first place, and if there's, I'm sure there is, more deep emotional work I need to process and work through to stop it coming back and enveloping me like it currently is. And she's a bit housebound as well. I'm hoping for an entire new freedom once I've healed from surgery. But as I say, I want to know why it grew. I'm also a girly, so polycystic ovarian syndrome girly. So maybe you feel inclined to do a potty on the womb. I'm going to include it in this. And all its issues, as my uterus is double the size it should be as well. I know the uterus is the creative part of my body, and I've processed the grief of losing it, but I'm certain I'll be more creative once I have energy, no constant nausea, less pain, bloating, IBS, and hideous fatigue. Okay, so what I feel like I'm going to do is I just have so many things popping off in my head as I read this. I think I need to go through it in sections and share my thought process that is going on for me. So I won't go too deep into the pathophysiology of endometriosis, but we have endometrial tissue that is inside of our uterus on the inner layer. And endometriosis is when that tissue grows in areas that it shouldn't. So it can be found in the brain, it can be found in the heart, it can be found outside of the uterus in the bowel area. And it can cause a lot of pain every time a woman will go through her cycle, or even sometimes at various stages of the cycle. And it starts to get inflamed before that endometrial tissue will shed. This is a very lay kind of explanation, but all that endometrial tissue that's everywhere else in the body can go through that inflammatory cycle as well and cause a lot of pain and discomfort. Now, the symptoms that people will get with endometriosis is hugely varied. Okay. It can be pain going to the toilet. It can be severe abdominal cramps. It can be so debilitating that people need to take painkillers. Sometimes they end up in hospital. Sometimes they have these severe attacks where they can't go to work, they can't look after their family. So it can really be life-altering in a negative way. It can cause things like depression, fatigue, all sorts of mental things as well. And it can be responsible for a lot of vague symptoms. Now, there are also a lot of people who do have endometriosis, but don't actually experience any symptoms. And what's interesting is that people can often be diagnosed with endometriosis as an incidental finding, like when they're having a scan around their pelvis for another issue. And my biggest question is it actually this tissue that is causing pain? Now, I feel like I've got to cover so many things. I hope that you know that I am aware that things can go the other way. Like I do know people who have had really positive results with surgery, excising the endometrial tissue that is where it shouldn't be. Other people do not have success. And I understand that sometimes that is the point that you go to because of the amount of pain that you're in. I am not against surgery or intervention. I do hope that I'm able to catch people way before that, because I do have a number of people reaching out saying, I need to have surgery on this in a few weeks. And I just will not go into deep emotional work at that point in time. It's not a safe thing to do. And I don't know, maybe I don't know how this podcast, my response is going to land. There could be a possibility that you look at postponing after I share what I have to share. Another couple of scenarios I want to go into before specifically speaking to this is so many people think that surgery is going to fix things. Yes, it can. In some cases, it can make you feel better for a period of time. I'm here for the people where it doesn't, or you've been told you need surgery and you really don't want to do it. You really don't want to remove a body part, or you're scared of side effects or infections and those kinds of things. I've also met a number of women who have had laparoscopies to remove endometrial tissue, and it hasn't made a difference. And actually, the scar tissue that can develop can actually cause as much, if not more, problems. So I think that these are important things to consider. I haven't been able to cover all of them. I'm just going off the top of my head, and it's hugely individual on someone's history and where they're at. Okay, so I finally got a diagnosis of endo. So my question would be, how long has it actually been there? Has it all of a sudden popped up? And why is it that it is all of a sudden a symptom, it is a problem, it is painful? okay? Because it's possible that it was lying there dormant. And I do think we need to look into why has it accumulated? Why has it grown? And I have a bit of an idea for this particular person because I have met them, I do know them. So I always say to people, because the biggest question is, what is the emotion behind my presentation? And I appreciate that that's what you want to know. And I really, really hope that you do something with this awareness of this emotion. And sometimes it doesn't make full sense. And that's where it's actually unpacking it in a more intimate space and actually speaking it out. So I would be asking that person to go back to, okay, well, when did your symptoms get really severe? What was going on in your life? Who were you interacting with that caused it to trigger to get this bad? Okay. And then going back, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, maybe this explains all the other symptoms that I had that I just pushed through. And so what was going on in your life during that period of time? So it's really starting to think, what was the trigger? Now, sometimes we just store really mundane events. It doesn't have to be a significant trauma. For some people, it is a significant trauma. And again, people have what I call trauma shame, where it's like, is my trauma bad enough to justify that I've stored emotion around this? It's all subjective. So it can be an accumulation of small things, or it could be something, a few significant events that you know that you haven't processed in your body. Okay. So it's helped me understand so many, I guess, the root or origin of many of my physical issues and some mental. Now, human nature is that we want to find a reason. We do want to find something to blame. And usually these kind of experiences can send us down quite an interesting pathway, especially when we try all of the things and they don't work. So what comes up for me is, do you really understand the root cause of these physical issues and the mental issues? That's just a question I'm going to pose to you. And as you're listening to this, I want you to notice the sensations that you're feeling in your body. Okay, and sometimes they can be sensations that make you clam up, and other times they can be sensations where it is your body telling you, yep, okay, we're onto something. And sometimes people get quite teary listening to my responses. Okay, I'm having a hysterectomy and oophorectomy as lots of benign things are growing on my ovaries. All right, what I'm going to go into is talking about this growth of stuff, the uterus growing bigger, and PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's just like there's lots of stuff growing. There's endometrial tissue growing where it shouldn't. Things are abnormal sizes. Okay, so with part of my work and how I piece it together, I never just segment things out, but I'm always trying to work out, is this physical? Is it emotional? Is it human? Is it energetic? And I do use the chakra system and the Ayurvedic dosha system as well to help work out my clients and many other layers. I work with chakras and doshas in a very unique way. But I know I have seen this person, I have interacted with them, and I know that they are very dominant in a certain constitution. Now, I'm not going to go into it because I don't want you to go and get buried and learn everything about it, because that's the problem with a lot of people, is that they're just trying to fix and separate the mind, the body, and different conditions. So there is a certain constitution that will tend to store and hoard things. So let me explain some other things and see if this particular person can relate, and any of others out there that might be getting symptoms like this. So storing and hoarding is literally, you could be storing and hoarding things in your house, difficulty of letting things go. This constitution type will tend to grow things like fibroids, like endometrial tissue. Everything just starts to get bigger, and their body can literally get bigger. So when this person goes to the gym, they usually don't get ripped and toned or lose weight. They just go boom, and they just get big. Okay, that is their body's response. There's actually nothing wrong with it. It is just what it does. And the more you can actually understand yourself and your constitution on that level, you don't have to make your body wrong. Okay. And let me keep on going into other things. So, fluid retention is really common for this type of constitution. So, getting the cankles after you fly, or if you're feeling unwell, just getting the swelling and edema in your legs, puffy fingers. A tendency, if you ate, to have more weight gain. Also, if you're feeling low in your mood, it's like stuffing down the emotions. So, putting food in there and then usually growing in physical size as well. Usually they don't like the winter kind of overcast or rainy environment, but we do live in Wanaka, which is a ski town, and I usually find this constitution who would normally get a little bit of seasonal affective disorder. They're fine if they enjoy skiing, snowboarding, getting out into the mountain. Sometimes we have what's called an inversion layer where it's incredibly grey, the clouds really low, but you drive up the mountain, you literally like pop into another world past the clouds and you're in sunshine above like the fairy floss of the clouds. It's quite amazing. So, what else can I say about this constitution? So, medically as well, this is how I can usually pick up if someone is heading towards a sort of medical condition or a disease state, and hopefully we can catch it earlier rather than later. But they will tend to have like the insulin resistance, which ultimately can lead to the diabetes if they don't get on top of it. This personality type, Constitution's personality type, is usually one who is just so incredibly supportive of everyone else. They are so supportive of their family. They're the overprotective mama bears who say, like, if you hurt my kid, I'll freaking kill you. They are just in service of people. They're quite often in jobs that are in service. It could be like a daycare teacher, a nurse is really common. And they're often really sacrificing themselves. They really would love to have support, but they struggle to receive it and they struggle to ask for it. And this is one of the biggest lessons I'm trying to teach many people, not just this constitution type, but is to lean in for support, lean in to your tribe, your community. These kind of people love to be surrounded by family and just their tribe family as well. All right, I've gone quite deep into that constitution type, but it doesn't surprise me. I would say that this has kind of gotten a little bit out of whack. And so growing endometrial tissue, growing a uterus twice the size, growing stuff where it shouldn't, having polycystic ovaries, it's all just like everything's getting bigger. Okay. So that's what I see is going on. Now, it is not about going out and remedying this and changing your diet around this dosha, although that can be something that helps at this level with where you're at, and why I think you're reaching out to me, asking for my input, is everything starts with processing your emotions. And again, it's like, well, what emotion is behind this? I might get to that in a minute. Let me see. So, having surgery, and I don't know if you've had surgery before, I am going to assume that you have tried lots of things, the medical route to even be referred to go and have surgery. Quite possibly you have tried the alternative. I get that because you're talking about, I'm aware of estrogen growth factor and hormones. You know, when people start sharing that stuff with me, which is great for the context of this and for you to know, I'm like, you know what, it doesn't even matter. Like that is all the masculine brain stuff, working out all the logic, all the physiology as to why is this happening. But the reason why people come and work with me, it's not just the emotions, it's the coaching, is because all the stuff that should work for these cases that are sometimes textbook, sometimes not, just stop working. And why is it that doesn't work? Because it doesn't have the right foundation, emotional foundation for these treatments, which could be quite effective to actually land. Okay, so chronic issues that don't respond to conventional treatment, alternative treatment. And I know that a lot of you have tried other emotional type work, but whenever I work with people, they're like, I've never worked with emotions in this way. Okay, so I understand that sometimes the pain does get so bad that we need to have conventional intervention, which might be medication, it might be surgery. And I always say, okay, if it's gotten that bad, do it. But just bear in mind that there's deeper work to do once you're out of pain. Okay. And so I don't know what the turning point will be for you to go a little deeper, but it's not to think that this surgery is going to fix it. Because when we're in high amounts of pain, it's very difficult for the body to actually access emotions and feel safe processing emotions. So I won't work with people who are in a really desperate state, and I won't work with people who are in really high pain levels, maybe even taking painkillers that kind of like check them out a little bit. But again, this is where I interact with people and I find out, okay, where are you at on the scale? So yeah, my biggest heads up to anyone considering any surgery is check in with your intention. Yes, you might be in pain, but are you willing that once you recover from this, or it's not about completely being out of pain, but less pain than you are, that you commit to yourself, that you look deeper into this, that you actually really understand yourself on a level that you probably don't understand yourself. Yeah, so many people wait for things to be better. And unfortunately, sometimes what can happen is that the surgery may not go how you want. Um, there's risk of infection that I think that we all need to consider. There's risk of complications. And sometimes you realize that you're better off before you went and did that thing. Okay. And um, ultimately, I meet people, different personality types. Sometimes it takes many, many hits before they go, all right, I'm going to do this work. So sometimes we think when I'm better, and there's a bit of a theme going on here, when I have this, when I have that, then I will be and I will feel the certain way, then I will do the work. So sometimes I have worked with people who end up having surgery, but they're in a more grounded place to make sure that they receive the surgery well, the general anesthetic, to have minimal side effects, that they recover and don't have the complications. Okay, so again, all of my work is very, very nuanced. Okay, yeah, so this is what I felt is I then feel like I have a clean slate to start with. Let me pull up another one. I'm hoping for an entire new freedom once I've healed. Okay, I was sharing this with a group of people that I've worked with before, and there is this mentality that once I have the thing, then I'll do the work and then I will be a certain way. Then I will feel a certain way. Let me just sell this and then I can do the work. I'll have the money, I'll have the space, and then I can feel happier and calmer because I work with you. Let me just get this project out of the way and then I'll feel better. Let me just get out of pain and then I'll feel better. Let me do this treatment. Let me go and have this surgery and then I'll feel better. When actually a very small percentage of people know this and have the ability to move into this, it is about be, have, and then do. Not I'll have the thing and then this. Because what happens is, catch yourself if you're in this pattern, is that you've said that over and over again. And the next thing pops up that you've got to do before you feel better, before you feel free, before you feel safe inside of yourself. Okay, so actually, it's easier said than done, but it's how can you bring in that sense of peace and freedom now and embody those feelings. This can be very difficult to do, to embody feelings that you feel like you don't have, that feels like it's unattainable until something else shifts. And it's harder to access feelings of a future that you're yet to experience unless you have really been able to feel the past experiences of which you have evidence for. This is a bit of a curly one. Sometimes I say some things that are a little bit of a mind bender, so you might need to go and rewind it. But there are so many people that are bypassing their past, which has happened, which has got emotions associated with it, which has got sensations and feelings associated with it. But instead, they're trying to visualize, tap into a future version of themselves, but they can't feel it and they can't bring in the emotion of it because they haven't felt stuff in the past. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So I always pick up in the language of the words people use when they write, the way they speak, and I just hear so much in it. I then feel like I'll have a clean slate to start with. So what I'd love to share with you is that regardless of where you're at, I hope you do get pain relief from this and that you recover well. And in either way, if you have complications, if you still don't have the pain, it still didn't do what you thought it would do. And I understand that sometimes you've just got to give this a go, that you make a commitment to work on yourself on a deeper level, regardless of where you're at. Okay. I feel like I'll have a clean slate to start with. That's the thing, is like we actually don't know if you will feel like you have a clean slate to start with. Endo is a chronic illness and I don't want it to grow more. Okay, so there's some stuff constitutionally that I think is out of balance, and I definitely feel like there is emotions. I'm not actually too concerned about the estrogen, the hormones, etc., because they all get triggered off by some form of stress. And we have stress in our body either physically, emotionally, or physiologically. Should I go into that? Physically can be like you're overtraining for something, you're working out too much, you're burning the candle at both ends with work. Emotionally can be you've had these experiences and you haven't processed emotions, so they just build up, big or small. And physiologically could be that you get a virus and that triggers off a cascade of events. Okay. But I want to know the emotions behind it all. That's the biggest question people have for me. And then I ask you, what are you going to do with it? Once you know the emotions, what are you going to do with it? I used to be an osteopath. And one of the questions we would always say, if people said, I want to have an X-ray, I want to have an MRI, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do with that? And sometimes it was good to get that, but it's like, is it going to change your treatment plan? Is it going to change the way you see things? Because the imagery doesn't always reflect what is going on. Okay, sometimes it can look worse than what you thought it was, and other times it can look a lot better. Okay, so what are you going to do with these emotions once you know what is stored in there? I am getting to it. Okay, why it might have formed in the first place, and I'm sure there is more deep emotional work to do. I need to process and work through to stop it coming back and enveloping me like it currently is. And so with this, it is really hard to watch and hear of people who just, I call it like the challenge magnet. It's like more things just keep on hitting. More things just seem to be going wrong. And this is something that I was talking to about a group that I have worked with before, is that a lot of the time they get glimpses of improvement and then have this issue that, why can't I do this on my own? And now I've been doing this work for a long time. I've been part of groups. I've explored different like one-to-one work in business and in personal life. And I have noticed that my biggest and most continuous growth is when I have support. So I'm always part of a group, whether it's business or energetically related. I've always had some sort of therapy, sometimes more intensely, or, at the moment I see someone every 2 to 3 months and it's just always booked in. And sometimes I find new people to support me, but usually it's some sort of long-term commitment to move through it all. And I see people just ditch the tools that they have learned that actually have been effective and ditch the support. And that this is when they go downhill. And then when you're in a negative loop, when you're in a spiral of pain, mentally, physically, it can actually be hard to remember that you made some gains in the past. So all of a sudden, nothing works, nothing's working. and your mentality doesn't actually help you. Okay. And sometimes, a lot of the time, other people can see it. They're not actually willing to say it because they don't know how you'll take it. And the thing is sometimes you can take it the wrong way because you're back in that state, in that victim state. All right. So why it formed in the first place, that's where I said, go back to now you have connected this diagnosis with the potential for you feeling certain ways, physically and mentally, what was going on in your life. What is your thought around what might have contributed to it? Sometimes people know that there is a significant event that they haven't really addressed, or they haven't been able to speak to someone about it. It's literally stored in a vault in their body. And there can be so much fear around it. I'm housebound. Yeah, I said earlier, I've worked with quite a few people with endometriosis, and often they can't work full time. It's a little bit unpredictable. So it's not necessarily just around their period. Yeah, unable to function, needing support, ending up in hospital, ending up on pharmaceutical medication, ending up on a ton of supplements and dietary changes when they take the more natural route, like naturopaths, functional medicine doctors. I do know a small handful of what I would say are great naturopaths who are very aware of this emotional work. And there's a lot of naturopaths and even functional doctors. I think, we think that they are going to get to the root and the natural way is the better way. But very quickly, those ways can get incredibly expensive and unsustainable. And I don't actually think it's right or normal for you to be on so much stuff long term. It kind of actually just keeps you in a bit of a trap and reliant on something else. Yeah, my gosh, there's so many tangents I'm going off on. I'd like you to think about, what is this new freedom once you've healed? So I remember when I broke my ankle, I know that this isn't a comparison, but when I broke my ankle and it wasn't healing, I thought, oh my gosh, what if I can never ride a horse again? I bought my first horse when I had this broken ankle and I knew it wasn't healing. I ended up just riding with a broken ankle because it didn't actually feel too bad. Because I thought, what if this is as good as it's going to get? Okay. So often we're waiting for things to feel better before we go and do the thing, when actually doing that thing that we want would actually help us feel better. Okay, I'm sure that's going to make sense to the person listening. All right. But as I say, I want to know why it grew. All right, I think I'm going to get to the emotional part. And this is the last paragraph. I know the uterus is the creative part of my body and I've processed the grief of losing it, but I'm certain I'll be more creative once I have energy, no constant nausea, less pain, bloating, IBS, and hideous fatigue. Yeah, so I would say all this thing like the nausea, the less pain, the bloating, IBS, and hideous fatigue, it may or may not be related to the endo. Okay, our body has this really amazing, beautiful way of communicating with us when it's not happy. And hopefully that stuff does go, you feel better, but it may actually have nothing to do with the endo, because they are kind of vague symptoms that there could be so many reasons and excuses for why it is there. Now, I'm always curious who people have worked with. Not that I necessarily know their work, but when you say that you know that the uterus is creative, it makes me think back to the initial couple of messages that I got from my health crisis was speak your truth and follow your intuition. Now, that's incredibly vague. Okay, I did eventually find out my clearer message. I'm going to be sharing about that on the masterclass. Maybe I'll share about it in a future podcast as well. But speak your truth and follow your intuition was not the final message for me. So knowing that your uterus is creative is that we can have these subjective meanings of what creativity means. A lot of people would be like, do I need to draw more? Do I need to dance? Do I need to make things? Do I need to create? Okay, and so this is why it's so important to work with someone on an individual level and actually know what is your level of understanding of creativity? What is your level of understanding when it comes to the feminine? That is another podcast I need to do on like when people just get the feminine energy completely wrong, and the stages and phases of understanding feminine energy. Okay, so I do this myself as well. And I think a coach said this to me really well is like, I know you know, but what else do you not know? And I feel like one of my gifts that I have is to be able to call out what people cannot see, the unseen, speak to the unseen, to bring the unconscious, sorry, to bring the unconscious to the conscious. Okay. Now, sometimes stuff cannot come up to the surface to be dealt with because the body doesn't have the mechanisms, the safety, the know-how, to know that, you know, if it brings it up, will you be able to deal with it? And this is where I think it is really important to find the right person who has the capacity to hold your stuff, especially when it comes to emotional work. And I've processed the grief of losing it. I always say, look, if you haven't done my emotional work, I don't know if you've really done the deep emotional work because it's very different. I come across a lot of people who say, I've done this, I've done that. I'm like, okay, can you go through it in this way? And also, it's the style of conversations that we have that brings light to an issue, that brings something from the unconscious to the conscious when you're ready to work on it. Like, how did you process the grief on losing it? Because also we think we're prepared for things, but we're never really ready until we're in the experience of it. So I'm going to take a guess that when you're actually going to approach the surgery, when you're there, you're going to have all sorts of feelings that happen. And I liken this a little bit to a baby. You know, I say, you know, do as much emotional work as you can before you have kids. It's never too late. But at the same time, there are going to be triggers that come up that only come up when you've had the baby, when you're pregnant, when it's a toddler, when it's a child, when it's a teenager, when it's an adult, and whatever experience it's here to show you. Okay, so we can't ever be 100% prepared. And so many people are waiting to feel completely ready. And unless you have experienced surgery over and over again, which you won't for this kind of thing, then you'll never feel ready. And people start to feel anxious around these upcoming things and they want to get rid of the anxiety. But I'm like, hey, you know what? The anxiety is completely normal because you haven't experienced this. People want to go into things feeling confident, but you can only feel confident about something until you have experienced it over and over again and know that everything's okay. All right. So it's important to address where the mind goes to some absolutely crazy places. A lot of people that I work with, they're like, you might think I'm weird. I'm like, it's never too weird for me. Go for it. And I usually help people understand why they're feeling the way that they feel. All right. So it's taken me ages, but I'm going to try and talk about some of the emotional stuff. Now, I think that there is a constitutional imbalance that's going on, but it is not necessarily about focusing on that constitution. It is about starting with processing your emotions. I have my way how. This is what I teach in my release course. This is what I do and facilitate with my clients in my ongoing work. It has to be experienced. It's not something that you can just learn because when we work on ourselves, by ourselves, we're limited to our own consciousness. We are limited to only what we're aware about and what we feel safe to work on. So sometimes people will hear me speak and their body will have reactions. Their mind won't be able to comprehend it, but their body knows it. Okay. And sometimes people come back to me years later and they're like, now I know what that means. All right. And I would love it if you would actually come into a group with me and interact with me. Sometimes it's not always about processing emotions. Sometimes I have people sit in the background in a couple of groups and just get used to that environment, get inspired by other people who are processing their emotions. And then finally they feel a little bit more ready, but never 100% ready. But they think, okay, I've got to change something if something's going to change. So This is where my work has really changed, is that I can't really give you an underpinning emotion. I can and I can't, all right? And it's not a certain metaphysical thing, because I've worked with many people with endometriosis, stuff where, they can't get pregnant, or maybe they've got a cyst on the ovary or PCOS. And I can tell you that pretty much all of them have had something different. Now, I guess what I'll talk about is some of the misconceptions people have is that they think womb, oh, you must have mummy issues. Not true. I have worked with people who definitely have some father relationship issues, and this has been the breakthrough for them in shifting their pain. Sometimes it can just be one significant release. Other times it is a culmination of us processing emotions together or them working through it. It can be, all right, so what are the overarching things around here? It's got to be something around relationships, all right? Someone that you are in a relationship with. This is anyone, okay? Not just your intimate partners. I've actually spoken about this a couple of times. I spoke about it. I believe I've got a podcast on the heart and the sacral connection. The sacral chakra comes up, which is this area, this region. I kind of am like, oh, I shouldn't have said that because now you're going to go read about the sacral chakra. It's so much deeper than that. But it's something to do with relationships in your life. I 100% know that. Someone that you've got an issue with. Now, this can be parents, it can be extended family members, it can be grandparents that you might have gotten along with that you didn't get along with, step parents, divorce in the family. It can be your past partners, unrequited love. It can be the cheating and the affairs that you have experienced or you've done to another partner. It is a fertility journey. Have there been any miscarriages, abortions, stillbirths, losing a child, unable to have kids? Is there birth trauma? Is there an issue that you're having with your kids? This is actually something that I work with a lot. It can just be the relationship you had with your kids, but people who are parents to high needs, special needs kids, like sometimes they feel so guilty, but sometimes they freaking hate them. And they don't feel safe to speak about that, but that is stuff that we process on, because deep down, there isn't a hate. There is an unconditional love in majority of cases, but you've got to acknowledge and you've got to process the fact that this is the way that you might feel. Okay, so your relationship with kids, workplace relationships, friendships. When we go on this growth pathway, a lot of the times our friendships will change. This particular type of constitution is going to have difficulty with boundaries and telling people, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. We're on a different pathway. I love you, but let's leave one another. This type of constitution, dominant constitution person has difficulty just letting go of lots of things in their life, letting go of jobs, letting go of just things in their life. Okay. What else around relationships? Okay, so on a deeper energetic level, it is around relationship, around sex, money, and power. Now, sex can be sexual intercourse, intimacy, but sexual energy is magnetism, attraction energy. Power is the ability to step into your power and make a choice from a very grounded place. It is about the ability to take responsibility. It's like, hey, this is happening for me. What can I glean from it? But I 100% would say, a lot of people need support with this to be able to see what they can't see. Money is energy. So many people have got interesting relationships with money, particularly with money, having difficulty investing in themselves, to make themselves a priority, to know that they're worthy and deserving of this. It's a whole other topic, money. Now, when I talk about the relationships, everyone's like, yeah, okay. And then I talk about sex, money, and power, the energetics. If I've spoken about this in different podcasts, it's the same. It's like, I know it sounds amazing, but you cannot tap into the energetics until you deal with the crap that's stored around, for example, relationships in your life. Okay. So it's not to say that the uterus and the ovaries have got to do just with like fertility and babies and your menstrual cycle or anything like that. Males or females, it is any relationship And I do think, I talk a lot about this chakra, the sacral chakra. Don't get stuck on the sacral chakra though, please. Because it's one of the lower chakras. And so it is where a lot of people have got to do their work to actually tap into creativity on another level. Creativity is not necessarily about doing and producing all of the time. What are some other things? It can be the relationship that you had to your menstrual cycle, losing your virginity. It can have to do with how you felt about your period. So if people have from a very early age, or sometimes even from the onset of their period, experienced a lot of pain, they can have a very hateful relationship with their period. They don't look forward to having their period. They've often suppressed it with medications, hormonal stuff as well. And that might be because that's all you knew at the time. But I do have some fascinating stories of people who, have had periods that stop them going to school at a young age, vomiting, diarrhea, severe pain, fatigue. And they've been suppressing it with hormones for many years because they want to go work, they want to go and live and enjoy life, but then they don't want to be on this medication. So we do the emotional work, they come off it, and they don't have any issues. They've tried to come off it in the past, but it's not been successful. So they go back on it. But when we work on the emotional level, then there can be a time where it feels good to actually try coming off or weaning off this medication. Stories of people having fibroids, being told that they need to have a hysterectomy and just being so against it, and then digging freaking deep to do the work and actually being able to shrink these fibroids. I think we need to hear more of these stories. They're not commonly spoken about. What else is there? Changes in menstrual cycle and periods is actually just a really common thing to happen on the release course. There's it seems to be this thing that isn't a problem, but people notice, oh my gosh, I had my period early, or this one was so heavy. Because we're working with one another over 6 weeks, there's usually a cycle that will hit. But a lot of people notice it's just so different, and they view and look at their period differently. After you do have the surgery, or if you do go ahead with the surgery, honestly, if I can encourage you, if you are able to, if you are able to still function on, the fact that you can send me this message and it's pretty coherent. I would say I would absolutely love to work with you on release. Some people might not be that happy that when they send in a question that this is what I recommend, but this work does go deep and it can't really be answered in a podcast. And if we're constantly just looking at social media posts, reading books, and not going deeper, then we will stay in certain places. I'm going to talk to a few other things, but hopefully what I've answered for you is that, yes, it's something about relationships, but that could be as vague as me getting the message that I need to speak my truth and follow my intuition. All right. It was only because I started processing my emotions that I got the second message of follow your intuition, and I kept on processing my emotions, and then boom, I got the message that changed my life. I'm going to share it here today. So I can give you an idea of what it's going to be about. But what I've really been honing in with people is that it's not just about knowing the emotion. It's not just about doing the emotional work. You've got to be able to get the message from the experience that you're having. And it's just so amazing hearing people process their emotions around what is seemingly unrelated events, organs, people, whatever, and the same message keeps on coming up. Because we are always sent things and people and interact with them for a reason. So with this, I think a lot of people know about the power of emotional work. I always say I shoot myself in the foot because I make it sound like it can be quite uncomfortable. But I think it's really important to be realistic that it can be uncomfortable for some people. I really, really admire the vulnerability of people that come into my group work and are willing to share. Um, we just create such an amazing connection amongst one another. And it's just knowing that, what of the event, the person is just like, I just want to move through this. It's not about ever forgetting the event, but it is allowing your body to process what it wasn't allowed to, what it wasn't able to, what it didn't know how to all those years ago. And we all will continue. I have challenges pop up, but I like to think that they are more challenges to embrace that are going to help me grow. But honestly, sometimes I see people who keep on saying, it's the universe sending me this challenge to see what else I can hold. I'm like, no, you're not freaking listening. You are not getting the message from this experience. So I'm going to say, have you really done the emotional work? How deep have you gone with the emotional work? And this is not just directly to this person. This is for everyone, because I say that if you've done the emotional work, your external life should be reflecting that change. And you have got to be getting the message from your experiences. Because, yeah, we can do emotional work and we can feel cool as a cucumber. We can feel positive. But if our body is still screaming at us, now it's not always physical issues, we can just be hit by external challenges, then I'm just going to say to all of you who are still experiencing that, you've not gotten the message. And the emotional work you're doing is just actually being quite superficial. I know that there is a lot of fear around this work. I had an amazing friend of mine actually come and do my release course after many years. I was talking about this stuff over a decade ago, and she thought I was a bit crazy, but she kept on listening and we're still friends. And then it was about a decade later, she said, oh my gosh, this is my whole world. And then finally, a couple of years later, she came on my release course last year. And although she signed up, she then sent me a message that turned into the 5 fears that people have about joining my release course. And that's on my podcast. You can just type in fear and the 5 of them will come up. And I absolutely love that she still posed these questions to me, because I said, you know what? I'm like just so in the moment. I don't document things. I said, all of these questions have come up so many times. So thank you for putting them there for me. I'm going to speak to each of them. Let me try and remember them off the top of my head. Is a fear of, what if I decide that I want to quit my job or leave my relationship? You can go and listen to the answers on them. What if I don't have capacity to actually hold what comes up? So I think one of people's biggest fear is the sheer fear of what is going to come up and can they handle it? This is why it's so important to have support, and not wait until like the last minute when there's like 2 days and then decide that you're going to like bring your biggest, darkest secrets to the table. Okay, the third one is, what if I don't go deep enough? What if I don't let go of what I want to let go of? And then many people identify as a sensitive empath. And so I don't think I'm going to be able to handle other people's stuff. Those are the top 5 fears that have come up that I've spoken to on my podcast. If I could encourage everyone to do this work, it would be incredible. I've worked with people over many years, and yeah, to be honest, some people drop off. Some people drop off the work. They don't want long-term commitment and support. And unfortunately, sometimes things do go downhill. Other times people are okay. It's all good. We're all on a different journey. And yeah, some people just continue the work and I get amazing messages of how things are landing for them. And because I have done this work for such a long time, I'm just such a huge advocate for the right support, implementing the right tools at the right time. We shouldn't be overloaded with all these things to do, all these appointments to go to. This is about ultimately living life. And how is it that you can resolve your pain, regain health, regain happiness? That's ultimately what we want. I'll be sharing a bit more about this on the masterclass. I've realized that I talk a lot about manifestation, but once upon a time when I had my health issues, I didn't freaking care about manifestation. I just wanted my pain to go away. I wanted my health to be better. Okay, I didn't want to dive too much into my story, so I've just shared little snippets. You will hear about it on the free masterclass. I'm sending you, this person who sent me this message, giving me full permission to be direct and blunt as I am. I'm sending you lots of love with whatever choice you make. If there is any possibility of postponing and you coming on the release course, just give me a message. And let's see, or hopefully I will see you at some point regardless, because we can't just remove organs. We never remove the emotion, because of the energy in the space that it likes to be stored. Sometimes it will move to secondary areas. So regardless of what you choose, do the deeper work regardless. Okay, not just because you're in pain or you want to get out of pain. It's actually because you have an amazing life and an amazing purpose to live into and live out and share with people. Oh, okay, so thank you so much for letting me answer this. Sometimes people are like, I do not want to ask a question. But if you would like to ask a question, I want information, I want details. And yeah, I can unpack it as best I can. I mean, this is the pain symptom. There's probably a whole bunch of other stuff that would make sense. It's actually all connected. We are all connected internally to our external environment and to other realms. This is something that's become really, really clear to me. I'm still continuously learning through the experience of working with people. So if you want to ask a question, go for it, but you do need to be prepared for me to be completely transparent. Some things won't land for you mentally, but I hope that this might be something, a message that lands for you that you'll be able to connect in with in the future. Okay, so if you're listening to this live Thursday, 18th of July, 9 a.m. New Zealand time, I have a free and live masterclass. It's called The Missing Link to Activate Healing, and it is for people with chronic health conditions. If you go to the page, you'll be able to see what the chronic health conditions are, because there are so many. I actually work with a wide range of things because for me, everything's got a common root to it. It's emotional. Okay, so if you haven't responded to conventional treatment, alternative treatment, maybe you've even done some of the energetic and the woo stuff, and it's really not shifting, then it's time to explore another avenue. Come to that free masterclass. I would love to share some insights with you. Okay, have a great week, and I hope I hear from the person that I recorded this answer for.